ಪ್ರಶಾಂತ್ ಅವರೇ ನಮಸ್ತೆ.
ನಮಸ್ತೆ.
ಈ ಸಂದರ್ಶನದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಿಡಾಮಿನೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 1 ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳನ್ನು, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಥಾಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಹೋಪ್ ದಟ್ ವರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ವಿತ್ ಯು. ಎಪಿಕ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಲೂಸ್ಲಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಇನ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ಮೀಡಿಯಾ ಟುಡೇ. ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ರೆಷನ್ ಆಗಿ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಇಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಎಪಿಕ್ ಅನ್ನೋ ಥರ. ಬಟ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಟ್ರೂ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಟ್ ವರ್ಡ್ ನೀವು ತೊಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ, ಈಗ ಲಿಟ್ರೇಚರಲ್ಲಿ ತೊಗೊಳ್ಳಿ ಅಥವಾ ಫಿಲಮ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ತೊಗೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಲೈಕ್ ಮಹಾಭಾರತ ಇಸ್ ಎನ್ ಎಪಿಕ್. ಎಪಿಕ್ ಅಂದ ಕೂಡಲೇ ನಿಮಗೆ ನೆನಪಾಗೋದು ಏನೇನು?
ಬೆನ್ ಹರ್, 10 Commandments, ಮಾಯಾಬಜಾರ್, ಲಾರ್ಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರಾಜ್ಕುಮಾರ್ಸ್ ಮೂವೀಸ್. Recently it was Bahubali for me. The world itself sets a space where I can call it an epic. Because ನನಗೆ ಅದು ಫಸ್ಟಿಂದಾನು ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಎಪಿಕ್ನ. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು, ಒಂದು ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ಯೂಮ್ ಡ್ರಾಮಾ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಮೈಂಡಲ್ಲಿ ಫಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿತ್ತು. ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ ಮೀ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಐ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ವಾಚಿಂಗ್ ಮೂವೀಸ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಲೇಟ್ 80s ಅಪ್ ಟು ಟುಡೇ. ನನಗೆ ಎಪಿಕ್ ಅಂದರೆ ದೊಡ್ಡದು. ಒಂದು ಗ್ಲಾಡಿಯೇಟರ್ ಇಸ್ ಅನ್ ಎಪಿಕ್ ಫಾರ್ ಮಿ. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಮೈ ಡೆಫಿನೇಷನ್.
ಸೊ ದೊಡ್ಡದು ಇಸ್ ಒನ್ ಡೆಫಿನೇಷನ್, ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ಯೂಮ್ ಡ್ರಾಮಾ ಸಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಅ ಥಿಂಗ್. ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನು ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಯು ಬೀನ್ ಏಬಲ್ ಟು ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಅ ಫ್ಯೂ ಸರ್ಟನ್ ಮ್ಯಾಂಡೇಟರಿ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಟು ಮೇಕ್ ಅ ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಎನ್ ಎಪಿಕ್? ಯಾಕೆ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂದರೆ, ಇನ್ KGF ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸ್ಪಾಟ್ ದೋಸ್ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ನಾನು ಈಗಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದ ಹಾಗೆ, ದೇರ್ಸ್ ಅ ಸೂಟ್ ಸೇಯರ್, ರೈಟ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೇರ್ಸ್ ಅ ಪ್ರಾಮಿಸ್ ಮೇಡ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೇರ್ಸ್ ಅ ಲೆಜೆಂಡ್. ಎಲ್ಡೊರಾಡೋ ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಲೆಜೆಂಡ್ನ ತರ್ತೀರಿ, ವೀರ್ಗಲ್ಲು ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಸಿಂಬಲ್ನ ತರ್ತೀರಿ. ಟ್ರೆಚರಿ ಇದೆ, ವೇರ್ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ವಿರಾಟ್ ಕಿಲ್ಸ್ ಸೂರ್ಯವರ್ಧನ್, ಸೂಟ್ ಸೇಯರ್ ಹುಚ್ಚ. ಸೊ ಇವೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ನೀವು ಕಾನ್ಷಿಯಸ್ ಆಗಿ, ಹೇ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಮೇಕಿಂಗ್ ಎನ್ ಎಪಿಕ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಈ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇರಲೇಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಬರ್ತದ್ದ, ಅಥವಾ ಹೌ ಡಿಡ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಕಮ್ ಟು ಯು?
ಒಂದು ನಾನಿವಾಗ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಸಿನಿಮಾಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಇವಾಗ ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗಳು ಕೊಟ್ಟೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಕಾಮನ್ ಇರೋದು ಒಂದೇ ಒಂದು ಸಾಮ್ರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಯುದ್ಧ ನಡೆಯೋದು. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ಸಾಮ್ರಾಜ್ಯ ಅಂದಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ನಿಮಗೆ ಆ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರಲಿ, ಆ ಎನ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿರಲಿ, ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಬ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಡೆಸ್ಟಿನಿ, or you have to bring in the sense of a large part of coincidences coming together, however we want to,
which is part of vidhi.
So we ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ತರದೇನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಂದು ಕನ್ವಿನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ಗೆ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಲ್ ಅವ್ರ ಒಂದು ಕಂಫರ್ಟ್ ಝೋನ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ಇವತ್ತು ನಡೆಯೋ ಕತೆ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಫಸ್ಟು ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಡ್ಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಅವಾಗ ನಡೆದಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವಾಗ ದೇವರು ಪ್ರತ್ಯಕ್ಷ ಆಗ್ತಿದ್ದ, ಅವಾಗ ಹಂಗೆ ನಡೀತಿತ್ತು ಅನ್ನೋದೊಂದು ಬಿಲೀಫ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಜನರಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ಆ ಒಂದು ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ನ ನಾವು ಏನಕ್ಕೆ KGF ಒಳಗೆ ಹಾಕಿದ್ವಿ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಮೇ ಬಿ ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಸಬ್ಕಾನ್ಷಿಯಸ್ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಪುಟ್ ಇನ್. ಇದನ್ನು ಹಾಕ್ಲೇಬೇಕು, ಇದನ್ನು ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೇ ಇದೊಂದು ಎಪಿಕ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಐ ಗೆಸ್ ವೆನ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ ಅ ಮೂವಿ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಅನ್ ಎಂಪೈರ್, you can do it straightforward, you can make it a straightforward subject also, but when you make it a straightforward subject, ನಿಮ್ಮ ರೈಟಿಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲೇನೆ ಒಂದು ಕೊರತೆ ಕಾಣುತ್ತೆ. ನೀವು ಇವಾಗ ಏನೇನು ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಲ್ವಾ, ಆ ಕೊರತೆ ಕಾಣುತ್ತೆ.
ಸ್ಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಫಾರ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ನ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿ.
ಸ್ಟ್ರೇಟ್ ಫಾರ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಸಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟು ಅಂದರೆ, ಇಫ್ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಟೆಲ್ ಯು, ನಾಟ್ ಮೆನಿ ಎಪಿಕ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಮೇಡ್ ವಿದೌಟ್ ದ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಡೆಸ್ಟಿನಿ. ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಒಂದು ಡೆಸ್ಟಿನಿ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನೇ ಡ್ರೈವ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಕಮರ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸಿನಿಮಾ, ವಿಚ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು connect to, and how difficult is it to connect to mythological movie? It's very very difficult. ನಾವು ಒಂದು ರಾಮಾಯಣ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ, ಒಂದು ಮಹಾಭಾರತ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾವು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಪ್ರಪಂಚ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಪ್ರಪಂಚ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಒಂದು ವಿಧಿ ಬರಹ, ಒಂದು ದೈವಶಕ್ತಿ, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ತಂದಾಗ then we start following these things very regularly. That's what happened with Bahubali also. Right. For me, it was not consciously built in. Subconsciously, like you said, now when you are telling me all these elements, when I think about it, now if you tell me if I can take it out of KGF, I'll say no, I cannot take it out of KGF.
You cannot take those elements out of
I cannot take those elements out of KGF, because back then it would have looked very bland to me. ಒಬ್ಬ ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಹುಡುಗನಿಗೆ ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದೆಲ್ಲ ಶಕ್ತಿ ಬಂದು he does something far beyond what a normal human being can do. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ರೀಸನಿಂಗ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ನಾವು. ಸೊ ವೆನ್ ವಿ ಟಾಕ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ರಾಕಿನೂ ಆವತ್ತೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದ, ಆ ಜಾಗನೂ ಆವತ್ತೇ ಹುಟ್ಟಿತು. ವಿ ಆರ್ ಸಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಟೆಲಿಂಗ್ ಯು ದಟ್, ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟೆಲಿಂಗ್ ಯು ರೈಟ್ ಅಟ್ ದ ಬಿಗಿನಿಂಗ್ ದಟ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಕ್ರಾಸ್ ಪಾತ್ಸ್. ಅವರಿಬ್ರು ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಸೇರಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕಥೆನಲ್ಲಿ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಬರ್ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಟ್ರು.
So then there is no question about how this boy can go and hit so many people. Idella questions parva. So I think they were all inbuilt subconsciously somewhere.
Both as an expression as well as artistically, ನನಗೆ KGF start is an epic start. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. There's the Prime Minister of the country, right? ಡಿಕ್ಲೇರಿಂಗ್ ಸಮ್ಮನ್ ಎಸ್ ದಿ ಬಿಗ್ಗೆಸ್ಟ್ ಕ್ರಿಮಿನಲ್. ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಇವನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯಾರು ಓದಬಾರ್ದು ಬರೀಬಾರ್ದು, ಅದೇನೇ ಪುಸ್ತಕಗಳಿದ್ರು ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಸುಡಿ ಅಂತ ಆಜ್ಞೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಶಿ ಈಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಅನೌನ್ಸಿಂಗ್ ಅ ಡೆತ್ ವಾರೆಂಟ್ ಅಗೇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಹಿಮ್. ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ ಜರ್ನಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ದೀಪಾ ಹೆಗ್ಡೆ ಇಸ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಆನಂದ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದಿ ಬುಕ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಶಿ ಸೇಸ್ ವೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಎಲ್ಡೊರಾಡೋ, ವೇರ್ ಇಸ್ ಯುವರ್ ಎಲ್ಡೊರಾಡೋ, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ that is how the title is introduced. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And all of this happens within 5 minutes. I'd be surprised if someone says I did not like the start of KGF Chapter 1. So please tell me, idana hege barudri?
Screenplay. So, ಅದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಬರೀಬೇಕು, ಇಲ್ಲ ಇದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಡಿಫ್ರೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಕೂತು ನಾವು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ದ ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ವಿತ್ ದಿ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಆಫ್ ಒನ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್ಸ್ ಆಂಬಿಷನ್. ದೇರ್ ವಿ ಬ್ರಾಟ್ ಇನ್ ಅ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಡ್ರಾಪ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಟ್ ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ KGF. ಸೊ ಹೌ ಡು ವಿ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ದಿಸ್? ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ 1000 ways that we could have started the movie with. But we chose this so that we bring in the narrative. We wanted the narrator to come in first. And the narrator is going to be the presenter of the movie, is going to be the voice of the movie. What ಇವಾಗ ಒಂದು ಈ ಥರದ್ದೊಂದು ನಡೆದಿದೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ದಾಖಲೆ ಇದೆ, ಅದನ್ನು ಯಾರೋ ಒಬ್ಬ ಹುಚ್ಚ ಬಂದು ಅದನ್ನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದಾನೆ. ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಟರ್ಮ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಆಸ್ ಅ ಮ್ಯಾಡ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ ಟು ಬಿಗಿನ್ ವಿತ್. ದಟ್ ವೆನ್ ದೀಪಾ ಹೆಗಡೆ ಇಸ್ ರೀಡಿಂಗ್ ದಟ್ ಬುಕ್, ಶಿ ಈಸ್ ಲೈಕ್, ಯು ಕ್ರೇಜಿ, ಹೂ ದ ಹೆಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ರಿಟನ್ ಅ ಬುಕ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದಿಸ್ ಅಂತ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳಲ್ವಾ. ವಿ ವಾಂಟ್ ದ ಸೇಮ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಫೀಲಿಂಗ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಿ ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್. Even they should feel it, that, you know, and we are building it up. So what does he come and say? Anand Ingalgi, he comes and he says, he scratches out the based on a true story, and he says, just read it as a story. And that is where we thought that we are going to bridge that gap between the audience starting to think that, okay, this is complete mythology, to a believable subject which could or could not have happened. Now, is this man right or is this man not right? So we started off on that note, and we built up on a Veergallu and all those things. The Prime Minister's bit is part of the screenplay where, you know, everybody wants to bring in what happens towards the end.
Right.
Give you a glimpse of what happens towards the end. Is the Prime Minister going to get rid of this guy, or is she not? And why did he become such a big criminal? So you have a curiosity based out of the first 5 minutes of the movie. So that is a part of the screenplay that we didn't say, okay, we are going to do this because we thought it was right for the whole story.
Fair enough, but ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಫಾರ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್, ಒನ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ದಟ್ ಯು ಮೇ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ನೋಟಿಸ್, ಒಂದು ಕ್ರಿಸ್ಟಫರ್ ನೋಲನ್ ಫಿಲ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ವಿತ್ ಅನ್ ಆಕ್ಷನ್ ಸೆಟ್ ಪೀಸ್ ದಟ್ ಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ದಿ ಟೋನ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಫಿಲ್ಮ್. ಅಂಡ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ನೋಟಿಸ್, ಲೈಕ್
James Bond movies.
Yeah, so there's an action set piece, and then the audience gets a second to breathe, and then again it runs. So ಆ ಥರ ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರೂ ಒಂದು ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇತ್ತಾ? Where did you get the style of writing from? Because you also mentioned, that's what I thought, Deepa Hegde's character I thought was representing the audience, right? So sorry, going back, reference ಏನಾದರೂ ಇದೆಯಾ?
No, sir. No. We did not put in any references for this movie. We have references
For artwork, we have references for everything.
But when it comes to the narration, I don't think we had a reference point for have we done.
I mean, it should look like this. It should be like this. Another point barilla. It was an editing call at the end of the day. Even when you edit something like this, it does not come together as a single scene. Only when you put background music to it and stitch it together and say that, you know, allad nadita ide, illad nadita ide, innond kade innond nadita ide. But what I'm trying to represent is all of this is happening as a single scene. So that became an editing call at that point of time. But the design was always meant to be like that.
And I think it is pretty obvious from the trailer as well that the PM has a bigger role to play in Chapter 2.
Correct.
Right? USA-USSR conflict na tarubeko, at least to drop some beans about it. ಆ ಥಾಟ್ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ? ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಟು 1980 and thinking, okay, politically ಏನು ನಡೀತಾ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತ. Is that how that comes?
That narrative was supposed to be much bigger in the movie. But ನಾವೊಂದು ಕಮರ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. You got to get the hero in fast.
Right.
So that got
lost in that narration.
ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು
I felt a little.
ನನಗೆ ಅದು ಪರ್ಸನಲಿ that is the kind of movie that I wanted to make.
I see.
But if I try to make a movie that is me and the way I want to present it, then they will not enjoy it, because first of all I put a star in the movie.
Correct.
I'm not making a movie with a newcomer where there is no expectation and I can seep the story into the audience. They expect that the hero's introduction is bang. They expect that I build him up to that point, and from then on it is about the hero. What does he do? I mean, not to digress from the whole subject of only heroism.
But there was a story also. Where is he going? Where he was in Bombay, he went to Bangalore. From Bangalore, he went to the Kolar Goldfields. So that story was written. But you got to get the heroine. You got to get the heroine as soon as possible. So all these things will get lost. And though that was the initial part of the story, I had to cut it down because that was not important as much as what the entertainment factor was in the movie.
ಎರಡು ಕ್ವಿಕ್ ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ಸ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್. ಒಂದು ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೆ, ಈ ನರಾಚಿ ಪೋರ್ಷನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಡ್ರಾಫ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂಗಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆ ಒಂದು 15 ನಿಮಿಷ ಇರಬೇಕಿತ್ತು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ಈ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟು ಆ ಡ್ರಾಫ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇತ್ತ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಐಮ್ ವೆರಿ ವೆರಿ ಹ್ಯಾಪಿ ದಟ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಸೇಯಿಂಗ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಥಾಟ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಇನ್ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಡ್ರಾಫ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಅಟ್ ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಥಾಟ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಗಿವಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್ ವೇಟೇಜ್. ಸೊ ಡಸ್ ದಟ್ ಮೀನ್ ದಟ್ you are looking at some political subjects, or do you have some political ideas for a film to be sort of mounted in future?
Political subject ಅಂತಲೇ ನಾನು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. I don't think about it as political subject, but for this particular character there is a threshold for every criminal. ನೀವು ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಏರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂದರೆ ಬರೀ ಅಲ್ಲಿನ ಸಬ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ನೀವು ಅದೇ ಒಂಚೂರು ದೊಡ್ಡದು ಆದರೆ ಒಂದು ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟ್ರು ಬಂದು ಹ್ಯಾಂಡಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆದರೆ ಒಂದು ಚೀಫ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್. ನಾವು ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಅ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ that is the growth that we are going to show in chapter 2 without revealing too much, for the prime minister to get involved into this whole thing. So ಆ ಒಂದು ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ that political angle became very very big for us.
ಅಲ್ಲ, I'm talking about the USA-USSR conflict. ಅದು ಬಂದದ್ದು ಈ ಗೋಲ್ಡ್ ಪ್ರೈಸಸ್ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ತೋರಿಸ್ಲಿಕ್ಕ, ಅಥವಾ ಯು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾರಿಡ್ ದ ಟೂ ಆಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಅಟ್ ದಿ ಎಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಡೇ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಗೋಲ್ಡ್?
I wanted to make a movie about the 70s firstly, and I understood why almost every Amitabh Bachchan movie had gold in it as a smuggling backdrop.
Okay.
I understood why that happened in the 70s, because the USSR and the US were in conflict. The gold prices went up. So I thought that was a very interesting point. So let me set the movie in the 70s. So if I put it in the 70s, I get that as a backdrop, and that is how the whole movie started for me. So that became a very very easy choice that I represent that. But the development of the movie became in such a way that became a very small part. Though initially it started off as a very very big part of the movie.
Now going back to 2006, which is when I think you came up with this, ಐ ಆಮ್ ಅಸ್ಯೂಮಿಂಗ್ ನೀವು ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಲಾಗ್ ಲೈನ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಐಡಿಯಾಗಳನ್ನ ಬರೆದು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರಿ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು KGF ಆಗಿತ್ತಾ, ಅಥವಾ ವಾಸ್ ದಿಸ್ KGF ಐಡಿಯಾ ಡಿಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಅ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್?
I had not written even a single word of KGF till 2014.
Okay.
I always had that idea in my head that the character is going to be like this. I had a few scenes that I had written in my head, but I had never penned it. That is, ಅದು ಏನು ಅಂದರೆ, ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಗೋಸ್ ಥ್ರೂ ದಿಸ್. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಬರೆದುಬಿಟ್ಟು ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಕದ್ದುಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಕಷ್ಟ ಅಂತ ಇರುತ್ತೆ.
ಬಟ್ ತಲೆ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಬರ್ತ ಹೋಗುತ್ತಲ್ವಾ?
ಇಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಮರೆಯೋಕ್ಕೆ ಚಾನ್ಸೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಫ್ಯೂ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಯು ಡೋಂಟ್ ಫರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಅಟ್ ಆಲ್. ಯು ನೆವರ್ ಫರ್ಗೆಟ್.
ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಯು ನೆವರ್ ಫರ್ಗಾಟನ್ an idea?
I have never forgotten an idea. There are some ideas that I have gotten 25 years back. It's still there in my head. Those ideas can never go out of my head. But whenever I write a dialogue, ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಬರೆದು ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ.
Correct.
If I write a particular scene, ಬರೆದು ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ. But an idea never goes out of your head. These are ideas that you live with. You know that the character looks like this. in your head. It is etched.
ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು.
So for me it was
ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕೆ ಜಿ ಎಫ್ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಅಂದರೆ ಸೀನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ವು, ಕೆಲವು ಸೀನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ವು ಫ್ರಮ್ 2006 ವಿಚ್ ಸಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ವೆಂಟ್ ಆನ್ ಟು ಪೇಪರ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ 2014.
2014. After I gave my first narration to Vijay sir and Yash, that is when they said we are doing this. Then it took me about 20-25 days for me to write down everything that was in my head.
Okay.
And even develop on that.
Sure.
And I started sharing these ideas with Yash mainly, and that is how it progressed.
ಶೋರ್, ಎಕ್ಸಲೆಂಟ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್. ಸೊ ನೀವು ನರೇಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಮೇಲೆ ಇಬ್ಬರಿಂದ ಎಸ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕ ಮೇಲೆ ನೀವು ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ, ಡಿಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಆ್ಯಡೆಡ್ ಟು ಇಟ್ ಆಸ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ವೆಂಟ್ ಬೈ ಆರ್
It did. Only when it comes to a boil would you want to put so much of effort towards that. At that point of time I was supposed to make a movie for Appu sir. Appu ಸರ್ದು ಒಂದು ಆಹ್ವಾನ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಕತೆ ರೆಡಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ವಿ. We wanted to start filming it, but because Appu sir had prior commitments, ತಮಿಳ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಜೊತೆ ಒಂದು ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು ಅವಾಗ, ಪ್ಲಸ್ there was something else after that also. So I knew that I'm going to have a year's break or a year and a half break. So that's when we signed on to this.
Okay.
So I was in that thought process, on family drama, ಆ ಥಾಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೆ. And then all of a sudden I had to jump to this. So once this started, I was excited to start writing about it, and it took me about, I think about a year before we said, you know what, this is our final draft for the movie.
Sure. And so can I say you have a natural liking towards gangster drama?
Yes.
Is that okay?
My influences have been mainly The Godfather and Scarface
Sure.
movies.
Sure.
And Ram Gopal Varma.
Sure.
The way he portrayed crime was very heroic to me at some point of time. But of course, I cannot do something like that in its true sense, an underworld movie in its true sense, because it won't sell. I understand those numbers also, what he had derived from his style of filmmaking. And if you don't put commerciality to it, there is a lot of commerciality. That's why I love those movies. But it is not the kind of commerciality that reaches out to everybody. So for me, I just changed that a little bit in my head.
ಈಗ going back to that narration bit, you have mentioned already in certain interviews that Andrews coming to Mumbai was the scene. Which was the other scene that you had apart from that? Because you said you had a couple of scenes.
All those scenes come in the second half.
Okay.
In the second chapter, you're going to get to see those scenes. So I can't mention those scenes.
Quick word about how you write characters, especially in Arachi portion al second half nalli in chapter 1. Basari Hengsu, Hucha, Kandu Kanada Tata, Maklu. It is very difficult for me to accept that this came subconsciously. Did you not think about placing a few of these consciously?
So, you're talking about human beings. Human beings who are brought in from different villages and they are put over here. So, we wanted to represent these people as human beings and what they are feeling within this new world that they have been dragged into. So, ಹಂಗೆ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ನಿಮ್ಗೇನು ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ, you want to represent these people, ಅವ್ರ ಕಷ್ಟಗಳಾಗಿರಲಿ, ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಏನೊಂದು ವಾಟ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಮಿಸ್ಸಿಂಗ್ ದ ರಿಯಲ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಔಟ್ಸೈಡ್, ಆ ಒಂದು ಪೇಯ್ನ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನು ತೊಗೊಂಬಂದಾಗಲೇ ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಹೀರೋಯಿಸಮ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೆರ್ ವರ್ ಸೋ ಮೆನಿ ಸ್ಟೋರೀಸ್ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ರಿಟನ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಟ್. ತುಂಬ ಕಥೆಗಳಿದ್ವು.
ಫಾರ್ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ Arachi.
For what happens in Arachi. We didn't want it to be too cliched from what I didn't done with Ugram also. There's this lady itself that we had first written, who was a blind girl who was brought in to this place. But then I thought, okay, it is going to look like one of those scenes from Ugram. So I had to change that a little bit.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. My question is exactly that. How are you deciding that there has to be a blind girl here? How does that come?
So that comes from the scene. That comes from the fight scene that I had already placed in my head.
Okay.
There has to be an outburst.
Sure.
For so much of pain, there has to be an outburst.
Sure.
So we create all this pain so that the hero starts to look like a beacon of hope. And that is what he does at that point of time. So ಆ ಮೀಟರ್ನ ನಾವು ಫಸ್ಟೇ ಸೆಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿರ್ತೀವಿ. I would have kept that scene there and placed it, and I'd say, okay, how much pain are we going to show? How much of emotion are we going to bring in to that point? And then it becomes very easy. You have to have a character there that you are going to build on from the beginning.
ಮೆಲೋಡ್ರಾಮಾ ಅಂತ ಬಂದಾಗ ವೇರ್ ಡು ಯು ಡ್ರಾ ದಿ ಲೈನ್? ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಯು ಕುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಗಾನ್ ವೇ ಬಿಯಾಂಡ್ ವಾಟ್ ಯು ಡಿಡ್ ಇನ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 1. ಸೊ ಹೌ ಡು ಯು ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಓಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟು ಮೆಲೋಡ್ರಾಮಾ ಸಾಕು?
I think that comes naturally. I don't have an answer for that. I think everybody have their own strengths, and everybody has a different way of perceiving a story. If you take this to another director, KGF, he would have made it look probably even more better than what I have made it. He would have put in better characters than what I have made it. So it came very naturally. We thought that this has to be put in over here, and this is how it is going to work. There should not be too much of a melodrama here. I don't know. I've forgotten the movie actually. Nan nijavalu nodilla. I've not watched chapter 1 since I've edited it and post production madadaglinda nan nodilla. I think the only melodramatic scene is when that Hucha takes that baby and comes and puts it on Rocky's.
ಇವನು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತ.
Yeah, ಇವನು ನೋಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ ಅನ್ನೋದೊಂದು I think was over the top melodramatic, but we needed that just before the fight happens.
So
A sense of conscience for the hero.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್.
To finally say that, you know what, enough is enough.
ಸೊ ಆ ಹುಚ್ಚ ಕೂಡ ಈ ಸಫರಿಂಗ್ನ ಆಂಪ್ಲಿಫೈ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೇನೆ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆ ಔಟ್ಬರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಫ್ಯೂಯಲ್.
ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಲ್ಲ ಇವಾಗ ಎಪಿಕ್ ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ, ಆ ಎಪಿಕ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ದಟ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ದ ಹೋಲ್ ಡೆಸ್ಟಿನಿ ವೆರ್ ದಿಸ್ ಫೆಲೋ ಶೌಟ್ಸ್ ಔಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಸೆಡ್ ಅವ್ನು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಯಾರು ಕಾಪಾಡ್ತಾನಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ನು ಬಂದಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಹೇಳೋಕ್ಕೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು ನಮಗೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ವಿ ವಾಂಟೆಡ್ ಅ ಮ್ಯಾಡ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ ಟು ರೆಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ದ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್. ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ Narachi, he's representing the world. He's representing the world in the sense that all his innocence and all his sarcasm will basically tell you what the world itself is. There is a Narachi everywhere. We don't know it. Maybe it is in our work. It is everywhere. That Hucha basically is telling you, ನಾವು ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಮಾಡೋವಾಗ ಅದೇ ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ತಕೊಂಡು ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಿಯಲ್ಲ ಗುರು ನೀನು ಅಂತ ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಬಂದು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ನನಗೆ. So it is a representation of what the world itself is.
Sure.
It's not just because commercial sense ಆ ಸಿನಿಮಾದಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೋ ನೋಡಿದೀವಲ್ಲ ಆ ಥರ ಹಾಕೋಣ. Never came out like that. We wanted somebody to glorify the hero also at the same time.
ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಎಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಸಬ್ವರ್ಟು ಮಾಡ್ತೀರಾ ಅಂದರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿದ್ದವ್ರೆ ಯಾರೊಬ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ನೀನು ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಬ್ಬನಿಗೂ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ತೀಯ ಅಂತ.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್.
ನಾವು ಉಗ್ರಂ, KGF ಇದೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ನೋಡಿರೋ ಕನ್ನಡ ಪ್ರೇಕ್ಷಕರಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಒಂದು ಪದವನ್ನು ಪಾಪ್ಯುಲರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ. ಆ ಪದ ಎಲಿವೇಶನ್. ಇದೆರಡು ಚಿತ್ರಗಳು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎಲಿವೇಶನ್ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಹೌ ಡು ಯು ರೈಟ್ ಎಲಿವೇಶನ್? ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಜೆನ್ಯೂನ್ಲಿ ಔಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿಸ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್.
ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ನೋ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಹೌ ಐ ಡೂ ದಟ್. ಎಣ್ಣೆ ಹೊಡೆದು ಬರೀತೀನಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ನೋ. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಟು ಟೆಲ್ ಯು ದ ಟ್ರೂತ್, ಜನ ಬೈಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಏನೇ ಮಾಡಲಿ, ಲಾಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಮೈ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪಿರೇಷನ್ ಫಾರ್ the kind of heroism that I put into cinema comes from the Telugu film industry. I've watched those movies, I've adored those movies. Chiranjeevi sir is my favorite hero in the 90s. I have not watched Tamil movies as much. Maybe I would have been inspired by that also. Nan Tamil baradilla illivargu. But the kind of movies that they did was truly heroic. Over the top heroic stuff which told you that, they laced these scenes, these elevation scenes throughout the movie, and they literally made movies to show you those elevation scenes. Sure. They had a proper story, but they had these elements throughout. And I think nammalli adanna jaasti nodokkaglilla yakandre so many of them were remakes. And the one movie that I truly enjoy and want to watch again and again is Om. And that is in the purest form of a gangster movie, but that also didn't give you the sense of heightened elevation.
Correct.
Where the hero comes in the last moment and he does something, magic ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಆ ಥರದ್ದು ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಆಲ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ತೆಲುಗು ಸಿನಿಮಾ. ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ಬಿಲ್ಟ್. ಒಳಗಡೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಅದು. ನೋಡಿ 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 ಅವ್ರಗಳ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ನೋಡಿ 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 ಆ ಥರ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ.
ಐ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ವಾಂಟ್ ಟು ಕೋಟ್ 2 ಮೊಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಒಂದು, ರಾಕಿ ಈ ದಿಲಾವರ್ನ ನೇತ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ಕತ್ತಿ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಕೈಯಲ್ಲಿ. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಇನಾಯತ್ ಖಲೀಲ್ ಬೋಟ್ಸ್ ಹಿಂದೆ ಹೋಯಿತು. You could have broken into the song right at that moment, but you don't do it. What you do, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಆನೆಗೆ ಕೆಡ್ಡ ತೋಡೋಕೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಯಾರೋ ಫೋನ್ ಕಾನ್ವರ್ಸೇಷನ್ನು ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಬಚ್ಗಯ ಮುಂಬೈ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಡೈಲಾಗ್, ಅದಾದಮೇಲೆ ಹಾಡು ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಅಗೇನ್ ಆರ್ ಯು ಗೋನ್ ಟು ಸೇ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಹೌ ಯು ರೈಟ್, ಆರ್ ಇಸ್ ದೇರ್ ಅ ಕಾನ್ಷಿಯಸ್ ಚಾಯ್ಸ್? ಇಲ್ಲ ಆಗ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಲೈಕ್ ವೈಸ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಇಂಟರ್ವೆಲ್ ಎಸ್ ವೆಲ್, ಗರುಡ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಚ್ಯೂ ಅನ್ವೀಲ್ ಆದ ಕೂಡಲೇ ಅದೇ ಹೈಯೆಸ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಹೈ ಪಾಯಿಂಟು, ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂಗೆ ಯು ಕಡ್ ಬ್ರೋಕನ್ ಇನ್ ಟು ಇಟ್. ಬಟ್ ದೆನ್ ಯು ವೇಟ್ and then you have these guys discussing kate namdu mugitu anta, and then you have Anantnag giving out a poem, and then you break into, you say to El Dorado, which is a fantastic closure. Film started with where's your El Dorado, and then the first half ends with El Dorado. So how do you make that choice? Illi bada we will just hold it for some time, stretch it for some time, add 2-3 more elements, and then break into the big juncture anta.
I think that's an editing call and a music call also. So basically, I don't know how many people get this opportunity to make the movies like I am making, where you edit, you take it to the music director and then re-edit again for the music. It's almost like when you watch my feeling, one of the strengths of KGF is, did the music come first or did the scene come first? ಅನ್ನೋದು ತುಂಬ ಕಡೆ ಅಷ್ಟು ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಡ್ಯೂ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಟು ಮೈ ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟರ್. ಹಿ ಟಾಟ್ ಮೀ ದಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್. ವಿ ಲರ್ನ್ ದಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ಇನ್ ಉಗ್ರಂ. ಟುಗೆದರ್ ವಿ ಲರ್ನ್ ಇಟ್. ಎಡಿಟಿಂಗ್ ಸೂಟ್ನ ತೊಗೊಂಡೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಸ್ಟುಡಿಯೋನಲ್ಲೇ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇದೊಂದು ಸೀನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಬ್ಯಾಂಗ್ ಬೇಕು, ಒಂದು 4 ಫ್ರೇಮ್ ಕೊಡಿ ಸರ್, ಆಯಿತು ಇದನ್ನು ಹಿಂಗೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಸರ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಸೈಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಡೋಣ ಸರ್.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್.
So this is the kind of discussions that we have had back and forth, and when we put the music on the scene, that is what enhances the scene altogether. ಒಂದು ಸೈಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡೋ ಸೀನ್ ಬೇರೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಒಂದು ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಕಮರ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಟೈಮಿಂಗ್ ಫಾರ್ ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಇಸ್ ವೆರಿ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ದಟ್ ಎಲಿವೇಶನ್, ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಬೇಕು, ವಾಟ್ ಶುಡ್ ಕಮ್ ಬಿಫೋರ್ ದಟ್, ಸಟ್ಲಾಗಿ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಡಿಸಿಷನ್ನು ನಾವು ವಿ ಟೇಕ್ ಇಟ್ ನಾಟ್ ಆನ್ ಅನ್ ಎಡಿಟಿಂಗ್ ಟೇಬಲ್, ಬಟ್ ವಿ ಟೇಕ್ ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಸ್ಟುಡಿಯೋ. And when you talk about both these scenes, I don't remember at what point we decided this, but I'm very very sure this would have happened only in the music studio. So I have that privilege of working like that with my music director, because he does not do music for 2 movies at the same time. He does not give it out to programmers. He sits and he programs the music for me in front of me. We take that decision together. ಇದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದೆ, ಇದು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ, ಇದು ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. So that becomes such an easy process. It is an arduous process, but at the same time we get our sense of satisfaction that abba ಈ ಸೀನ್ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ from there.
In fact, no Ravi Basrur, no KGF.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So I think you answered my question about music anyway, but ಇದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಹೇಳಿ. I think the first half only has hero introduction song, whereas in the second half you have both Sidila Bharava and Dhira Dhira more or less coming in very quick succession.
But the Dhira Dhira became an absolute background music for that heroic moment. Actually, that song was made for the second half of the movie when we initially wrote it, which has now become chapter 2.
Oh.
But we thought let's throw the kitchen sink at this movie, because we don't want to leave any stone unturned.
Correct.
And we took out the best song from that. It was very difficult for us to accept that idan bitbidoda igle anodondittu, but we had no choice, but we threw it in that, and that we treated that like a background music.
Absolutely. And especially when the female voice comes in, and I was just taking this with a couple of my other friends, all of them agreed, female voice Dhira Dhira bandaga, it elevates it even further, and it does something to you. A few more very quick questions about your writing. Iga KGF Chapter 1 is, or whole of KGF is Rocky's journey, right? One hero's journey anta tagondaga, it is expected even in the writing technique that there has to be a very big failure that the hero meets. But interestingly, ನನಗೆ ಆ ಥರ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಫೇಲ್ಯೂರ್ ರಾಕಿ ಮೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ಹಾಗೆ ಕಾಣಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಲ್ದೋ the film completely works. Would you agree? Do you think Rocky really met with a very big failure?
So chapter 1 is just the first half of the movie.
Okay.
So once you watch chapter 2, you can ask me after the end of that.
ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅದೇ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಐ ಆಮ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಬ್ರೇಕಿಂಗ್ ಮೈ ಹೆಡ್ ಹೌ ಡಿಡ್ ದಿಸ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಅಂತ, ಮೇ ಬಿ ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಇನ್ ಎಡಿಟಿಂಗ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದಟ್ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್. ಬಟ್ ಈಗ ಶಾಂತಮ್ಮಾಳ ಕಷ್ಟ ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಸುಮಾರು ಫಿಲ್ಮ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ವಿಡೋ, ಯಂಗ್ ವಿಡೋ, ಬಡತನ, ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್. ಬಟ್ ಹೌ ಡು ಯು ಥಿಂಕ್ ದಿ ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಫರ್ಗೇವ್ ದಟ್ ಆರ್ ಡಿಡ್ ನಾಟ್ ಇವನ್ ಮೈಂಡ್ ದಟ್? ಅದು ಯಾಕೆ ತಾಯಿಗೆ ಮಾಡಿದ ಪ್ರಾಮಿಸ್ಸು ಅಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ವರ್ಕ್ ಆಯಿತು, ಆಲ್ದೋ ದಿ ತಾಯಿಸ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಸ್ಟೋರಿ ಇಸ್ ಪ್ರೆಟಿ ಜನರಿಕ್? ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಯು ಥಾಟ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದಟ್? ವುಡ್ ಯು ಅಗ್ರಿ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಪ್ರೆಟಿ ಜನರಿಕ್?
It is very generic. I do agree with that. Firstly, we got our casting right. We wanted to cast a very, very young girl. ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ 14 ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕೆ ಮದುವೆ ಆಗಿತ್ತು
ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ
ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ವಿ ಗಾಟ್ ದಟ್ ರೈಟ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ her eyes tell you that she has gone through this struggle like everybody else might have done it also. What came out of that? What is the result of that? How did she bring up her son and what did she bring him up to? ಇವಾಗ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಯು ಟಾಕ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ಸಕ್ಸಸ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಬಟ್ ವೆನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಲಿಸನ್ ಟು ದಟ್ ಸ್ಟೋರಿ? Only when you're successful.
Correct.
If you fail, nobody is going to listen to that. Similarly, her influences in life, her frustration in life, the last moment she throws it on her son.
Correct.
No mother will tell her son that.
Exactly.
But all her frustration, she has seen so much of hardship in her life and she's dying just because of money. So the one thing that she remembers about her life is money. She says, I don't care how you live your life, but when you are dying, you should have all the money.
Because ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ ಹಾಗೆ it could be looked at as an irresponsible statement.
Very, very irresponsible. Even ಒಬ್ಬನೇ ಹೋಗೋ ಗ್ಯಾಂಗ್ ಕಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೀಯಾ? All these things. But I am talking about a character. I am not here to preach.
Absolutely.
I am talking about a character. So when you talk about this and the result.
And that character is also not saying something very evil as such. ಶ್ರೀಮಂತನಾಗಿರ್ಬೇಕಪ್ಪ ನೀನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ.
So but the result of that is that Rocky goes on to do so many big things, and because he's doing such big things, the mother also is getting highlighted. If he ended up being nothing, whatever the mother said wouldn't have made sense.
Absolutely.
So I think when you talk about other movies and this movie and how that subject is very, very generic, and yet it works because I think, like you said, it works as an epic. Then you bring in those smallest human emotions to put them together.
And KGF is all about that promise.
Yeah.
Right?
It's all about that promise. We never took our eyes off that.
Exactly. Chapter 1 ನೋಡಿದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಸಿಸಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯಾಲಿಡ್ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಸಿಸಮ್ ಅಂತಿತ್ತಾ? Did you take any point out of that?
I think a lot of people said it was too fast, the movie. And I'm sure people have a lot of criticism which they don't come and tell me on my face. But it was not a perfect movie, by the way. It was not something that, a lot of things went wrong. It was the first time we were doing such a big movie. But yet we were managed to stitch it together to make it work. The one thing that they said was it was very fast. The movie's length was about 2 hours 28 minutes. Removing all the thanks cards and smoking cards and all of those things. And for a movie of that budget was a very big budget for a Kannada movie. And all our major returns had to come from Karnataka.
Correct.
So I had that question to Vijay sir as to what length itre 5 show ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಒಂದು ದಿವಸಕ್ಕೆ. So then we sat down and I concentrated on that a lot. I took out a lot of these portions which could have been more elaborate. ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂಚೂರು ಕಮ್ಮಿ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು 2 hours 35 minutes ಕೊನೆಗೆ ಬಂದು ಕೂರಿಸಿದ್ವಿ, including everything end to end. Great. So that was a call that I did not want to take because of lack of intention or anything. It was just because for the distributor it is going to help a lot.
Yeah, you put the producer ahead of
100%
the director. Do you write alone or do you write with the team?
I write my scenes by myself, but I write my dialogues. I have a beautiful bunch of writers.
Yeah.
And in chapter 2, I had the addition of, Yash helps a lot with the screenplay.
With the screenplay as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. I thought it was only with the dialogues.
No, with the screenplay also. He's my first audience. Whenever I tell him that this scene works, if he has a smile on his face, it will work. Then he'll say, okay, inging marana, idan add marana. ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ he's got that intelligence for cinema, which I love, and I blindly follow him. Now I've changed my dependency was a lot on me till chapter 1. Now that burden has been eased by Dr. Suri anta. He's a part of the writing team, and I'm heavily dependent on him. Chandramouli is writing the dialogues. ಅವನು ಒಂದು 1000 ಡೈಲಾಗ್ ಬರೀತಾನೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ there'll be about 10 diamonds which we take and we put into the movie. So he's there. Now with Salar I have a different team who I brainstorm. I have the idea in my head that I have to do this, and then we brainstorm and we bring it.
Sure. So you have been tweaking it every single time.
100%.
Got it. So talking about scenes, ಪ್ರತಿ ಇಂತಿಷ್ಟು ನಿಮಿಷ ಒಂದು ಹೈ ಮೊಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಒಂದು ಹೈ ಸೀನ್ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಥಾಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತಾ?
100% ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. That is commercial value that we put in, but we don't force it in. ಅದನ್ನ
ಆಬ್ವಿಯಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದೆ
ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಪ್ಲೇ ನಲ್ಲೇ ಅದನ್ನ ತಗೊಬರ್ತೀವಿ. ಸಮಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಹೈ ಮೂಮೆಂಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಕಮ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ವಿಲನ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್. ಇಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸಂಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಕಮ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ದ ಹೀರೋ. Sometimes can come from the villain, and sometimes it comes from the hero.
Absolutely. In fact, talking about elevation, ಅದು ನಾನು ಬರ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ. You elevate the moment with the hero sometimes, with the reaction of the other artists at times, with the dialogues that the other artists are saying at times. You elevate the moment with the villain, or Garuda in this case at times. You elevate the moment with the place itself. KGF ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಡೈಲಾಗ್ ಇದೆ, where I think Andrews is saying, ನೀವು ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೀರಾ ಅದರ ಮಧ್ಯೆ, and with the music, you know, there the entire place is getting elevated. Finally, about writing bit, ಕಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬ ಮುಂದೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ. How did that moment happen?
I think that was a screenplay call once again. That is to bring you back to the reality.
Right.
To bring you back to the reality, and it was not. I didn't think it was going to become that big a matter. A lot of people told me that they loved that.
It's a master stroke.
Yeah.
And I want to know, was it a conscious choice?
Yeah. So basically, we were taking this risk already that we were leaving our best portion of the original subject to part 2. Chapter 2. So we said, okay, we'll have to give an advertisement that part 2 is going to be like this, because people should not think that this is all we are going to be doing, you know, running around in Narachi and fending off and all that. So ಅವೆರಡು ಸೀನ್ನ ತಗೋಬರ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಯಾವಾಗ ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಲ್ಲ ಆವಾಗ then we said, okay, you know what, we cannot bring it any more organically than for this man to be like this. And also that was also part of the screenplay, because is this man is in his senses?
Correct.
Is he a madman? Is he written something out of delusion? ಅನ್ನೋದೊಂದು ತಗೊಂಬರ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು ನಾವು. Is he telling you the story right? Or is it his own story? He doesn't even know where he is sometimes. How do I trust this fellow to tell me a story like this? So all those thoughts went into that particular
In
moment.
fact, that brings a beautiful parallel. ನರಾಚಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹುಚ್ಚ ಕತೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ in real life ಆನಂದ್ ಇಂಗಳಗಿ,
who's thought to be a madman.
Yeah. And he's the narrator, right? For heaven's sake. Okay. Question about editing. ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರಿ, you know, you had to sort of pace it up or remove the stretches, the stays and all of that because of the number of shows you wanted to run and all of that. But at the same time, ನೀವು ತುಂಬ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ವಿಚ್ ಐಮ್ ಗಿವಿಂಗ್ ಯು ಆಸ್ ಅ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ನಾನು ಪ್ರತಿ ಸಲ KGF ನೋಡಿದಾಗ್ಲೂ ಒಂದು ಹೊಸ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ನ ಡಿಸ್ಕವರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಒಂದನ್ನು ಹೇಳಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ, ಆಂಡ್ರೂಸ್ ಬರ್ತಾನೆ ಬಾಂಬೆಗೆ, ಬಂದು ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಹಿ ಸೇಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಯು ಡೂ ಅಂತ ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ರಾಕಿಗೆ. ರಾಕಿ ಒಂದ್ಸಲ ಹಿಂದೆ ತಿರುಗಿ ನೋಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ನೋ ಇಫ್ ಯು ರಿಮೆಂಬರ್. ಹಿಂದೆ ಆ ಚಾಚಾ ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಅ ಫ್ಯೂ ಆಫೀಸ್ ಬಾಯ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಹಿಂದೆ ತಿರುಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೆನ್ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಹಿ ಸೇಸ್ ಎಸ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್, ಹಿ ನಾಡ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್. ಆ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ ನನಗೆ ರೀಸೆಂಟಾಗಿ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಓಹ್ ಹಿಂಗೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದೆನ್ ಐ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ಲೂಪ್ ಇಟ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ವಿತ್ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಎಂಡ್. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಮದರ್ ಇಸ್ ಸೇಯಿಂಗ್, ನಿನ್ನ ಹಿಂದೆ 1,000 ಜನ ಇದ್ದರೆ ಪ್ರಯೋಜನ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ಯುದ್ಧನ ಗೆಲ್ಬೋದು, ಅದೇ ನೀನೊಬ್ರು ಮುಂದೆ. ಸೊ ಐ ವಾಸ್ ಲೈಕ್, ಓಕೆ, ಅಟ್ ದಿಸ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಹಿ ಈಸ್ ಲುಕಿಂಗ್ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ ಟು ಸಿ ಹೌ ಮೆನಿ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಹಿ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಬಿಹೈಂಡ್ ಹಿಮ್. But it closes off at the end by saying, no, it doesn't matter how many people are behind you. Anta. You may have written it like that, you may not have written it like that, that's different. But as an audience, ನನಗೆ ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಈ ಡೀಟೇಲ್ ನನಗೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ಸಿಗಲೇ ಇಲ್ವಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ And so many such other details. So when you are rushing through, ಆ ಡೌಟ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತಾ, ಓ ಆಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗತ್ತಾ ಇಷ್ಟು ಫಾಸ್ಟ್?
ಖಂಡಿತ ಡೌಟ್ ಬಂದೇ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ನಮಗೆ. ಬಟ್ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಐ ರಿಸೀವ್ಡ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಹೂ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ವಾಚ್ಡ್ KGF ವಾಸ್, ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಟೈಮ್ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಇನ್ನೂ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆಯಿತು ಗುರು ನನಗೆ ಅಂತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಈವನ್ ವೆನ್ ವಿ ವರ್ ಡೂಯಿಂಗ್ Chapter 2, though I was not happy with the pacing of the movie, Yash told me very clearly, ನಿನ್ನ ಸ್ಟ್ರೆಂತ್ ಏನಿದೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಡ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಲೈಕ್ಡ್ ಇಟ್, ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದೋಸ್ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಯು ಇಂಟರ್ಕಟಿಂಗ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ಎಡಿಟಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ಯಾಟರ್ನ್, ಅದನ್ನು ಮಿಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಡ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು. ಸೊ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಟ್ರೈಂಗ್ ಮೈ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಟು ಫಾಲೋ ದಟ್, ಬಟ್ ಐ ಮೇಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಮೋರ್ ಈಸಿಯರ್ ಇನ್ Chapter 2 ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಐ ವಾಂಟ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಟು ಎಂಜಾಯ್ ದ ಡ್ರಾಮಾ ಮೋರ್ ದೆನ್ ಎನಿಥಿಂಗ್ ಎಲ್ಸ್.
Again, talking about editing, the whole of Chapter 1 is moving towards one point, which is killing of Garuda. I'm sure you would have heard from a few people at least that that is the big event, but ಅದು ಒಂದು 6ರಿಂದ 7-8 ನಿಮಿಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿದೋಗುತ್ತೆ. That is okay for me. How did you decide how the slashing should be done?
That I had visualized. That was a director's call. That
ಎಷ್ಟು ಹೊತ್ತು ತಗೋಬೇಕು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ, ಎಷ್ಟು ಹೊತ್ತು ತಗೋಬಾರ್ದು ಅನ್ನೋದೊಂದು ಥಾಟ್ ಇತ್ತಾ? Because I'm sure ಮಾರಿ ಜಾತ್ರೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ and that is where he will come out of the pond and slash him ಅನ್ನೋದು I think you would have decided. But my question is, stuck ಅಂತ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. Of course there's a slow-mo and all of that, but ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನೀವು did you give it a thought? How much time do you want that entire event?
ಸೊ ನಾವು ಕ್ಲೈಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಫೈಟ್ ಇಡಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋದೇ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕೊರತೆ ಅಂತ ಜನ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರು. ಬಟ್ ಐ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಯಶ್ ವರ್ ವೆರಿ ಕ್ಲಿಯರ್ that this is our story, this is how it should end. ಅದನ್ನೇ ಸಕ್ಕದಾಗಿ ತೆಗಿಬೇಕು, ವೆದರ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಇಟ್ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಸೀನ್ ಅ ಫೈಟ್. ಸುತ್ತಿಗೆದು ಫೈಟ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದನ್ನು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಇವಾಗ ನೋಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಅ ಸಡನ್ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಫೈಟ್ ಇಡಬೇಕಾ ಬೇಡವಾ, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಕೂತಿದ್ರೆ, ಫ್ರಮ್ ದಿ ಔಟ್ಸೈಡ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್ ಅಸ್ ದಟ್ ಯು ನೀಡ್ ಅ ಕ್ಲೈಮ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಫೈಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಿಸ್. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ವಿ ಸೆಡ್ ನೋ, ವಿ ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಸ್ಟಿಕ್ ಟು ಅವರ್ ಗನ್ಸ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಡೂಯಿಂಗ್. ಸೊ the moment that it happens, the way it is going to happen, that was actually a very big procedure. Once again, with the music director. The music director had to create a music for that, create that tension for that. Then we had to re-edit it for that. And we had to do it in a space where it didn't feel redundant. Or ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, this guy is ಎಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾನೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾನ, ಇಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾನ, ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಹುಡುಕಾಟದಲ್ಲಿ it should not look too overdrawn ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ತುಂಬ ಎಫರ್ಟ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ವಿ ಆ ಒಂದು ಇದಕ್ಕೆ. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ ದಟ್ ಐ ಗಾಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ದಟ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ವೆಂಟ್ ಕ್ರೇಜಿ ವೆನ್ ದೇ ಸಾ ಹಿಮ್ ಕಮ್ ಔಟ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ that worked for us. So many people said it was equivalent to 5 climax fights, that moment. So that gave them the sense of satisfaction.
Absolutely. Ugram and KGF ಎರಡರಲ್ಲೂ ಒಂದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಎಡಿಟ್ ಪ್ಯಾಟರ್ನ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದಾ, ಆರ್ ಡು ಯು ಡಿಸ್ಟಿಂಗ್ವಿಶ್ ಇಟ್?
I've never thought about it from that sense, but it could be. It could be.
And if it is, then can we consider that your signature?
I think for these kind of movies, I will be doing that. But once I move on to genres where these are not required, I know one of my biggest criticism is the way I edit my movies. Many people have told me that, I think you should give it to an editor outside, just to give you an outside perspective of how much better your movie can become. But I had the constraint of time also in that one. So this one is a little more easy paced. This is 248, the length of the movie. Right. And this will sort of give you the space for every character and almost all the details that we want to present in the movie, because we want people to enjoy the drama, not just the world or anything else.
Sure. So what I was honestly interested in is, so Prashanth Neel knows another way to edit as well.
Of course.
It's totally for the genre that you decide what to edit. One factor that clearly separates KGF from the other films we saw until then was the visuals, right? And Bhuvan had worked with you even in Ugram, right? So KGF ge anta bandaga, What was that one thing that both of you decided upon as far as the visuals are concerned?
We should have many handheld shots. We don't want to have too many of these steady shots, and the visual should be moving. Though we created huge sets, ಆ ಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ತೋರಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು 2-3 ಶಾಟ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ, ಮಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಗಿವ್ ದಟ್ ಪರ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ದಟ್ there's something wrong about this world. So that handheld pattern of cinematography, I think he did it brilliantly. Not many people can carry a camera that heavy on their shoulders throughout the length of a day. He did it for many days.
Visuals ke by any chance ಯಾರಾದರೂ reference ಇತ್ತಾ?
We did discuss about references. Visual and art ಬಂದು ಮ್ಯೂಸಿಕ್ ಬಂದು ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟೇ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಇನ್ ಮೈ ಹೆಡ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೆನ್ ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಮಾಡಿಫೈ ಇಟ್ ಟು ಅ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ವೇರ್ ಇದೆಲ್ಲೂ ನೋಡಿರಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋ ಥರನೇ ತೊಗೊಬರ್ತಾರೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಆರ್ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಗಿವನ್ ಲೈಕ್ ದಟ್. ಸೊ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ರೆಫರೆನ್ಸಸ್ ವರ್ something like a Gladiator, something like Mad Max. Many people compare this, the action scenes to that. But we wanted, the reason why we were drawn to those movies was they gave you a sense of idu narka, another helplessness, and so that was the only reason why we looked at those references.
Sure.
But I think most of the visualization, Bhuvan was very clear from the beginning that we have to get it out. We should not put too much of emphasis. He hardly used lights for these scenes. I don't know how many people will be able to shoot like him. ಎರಡು ಲೈಟ್ ಇಟ್ಕೋತಾ ಇದ್ದ, and for such a big production he used to keep 2 lights and he used to say, I just want these 2 lights. And I think it shows also in the movie, where you don't know where the light is coming from.
1-2 ವಾರಗಳ ಹಿಂದೆ ನಾನೊಂದು ಟ್ವೀಟ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದೆ, that familiarity is both a blessing and a curse ಅಂತ. ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 1 ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 2 ಇಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 1ನ ಆಬ್ವಿಯಸ್ಲಿ ಜನ ಇಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಬಟ್ ಅಟ್ ದಿ ಸೇಮ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 2ನಲ್ಲಿ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 1ನಲ್ಲಿ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಮೇ. ಡು ಯು ಲುಕ್ ಅಟ್ ಇಟ್ ದಟ್ ವೇ?
Yeah, 100%. I think that familiarity is not going to be there in this. As much as the trailer tells you or whatever, we didn't want people to start look at it as a totally different movie. So we cut the trailer which also represents that world. But familiarity in the sense that the story moves on. We show that world and all the problems that world is going to face. What is this guy going to face? Rocky is going to face what kind of problems over here? ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್ಗೆ ತೊಗೊಂಬರ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಈವನ್ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಸಿ ದಟ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಅ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್, ಐ ಡೋಂಟ್ ಥಿಂಕ್ ದ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಓವರ್ ಹಿಯರ್. ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ ದ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಓವರ್ ಹಿಯರ್, ಆರ್ ದ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ಬಿಗರ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂ ಓವರ್ ಹಿಯರ್. ಸೊ ಯು ಮೂವ್ ಆನ್ ವಿತ್ ದಟ್ ಡ್ರಾಮಾ. If you are still looking for visuals in KGF, I don't think people are going to come back to watch KGF only for the visuals. I think there is a very small percentage who are still thinking that scale ಇರಬೇಕು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಮತ್ತೊಂದು, ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ದಾಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ.
ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್.
ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ 1ನಲ್ಲೇ ದಾಟ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ. With that kind of budget itself, we have achieved this. Now with this budget, you think we couldn't have achieved more? We would have. That is a no-brainer. But I think they are coming to watch the conflicts.
No, I'm very happy with this answer. And also because you're talking about conflicts, Ali Garuda, in my opinion, more or less Rocky won over him easily. But here you have 2 big forces. You have Adhira and the PM, and probably hence the stakes are high and the conflict is higher. Now with your permission, ಕೆಲವು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. Okay. Do I have the permission?
Yeah.
Okay. So ನಿಮ್ಮ ಇಂಟರ್ವ್ಯೂ ಒಂದರ ಯೂಟ್ಯೂಬ್ ಕಮೆಂಟ್ ಇದು. He talks about fear and money consistently. That clearly shows he has gone through a lot of shit in his life. Once he believes that he is in the safe zone, he will start putting art as a priority. Let's respect his art as an audience. That is the comment. ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ರಿಪ್ಲೈ ಬಂದಿದೆ, nope, he is very rich ಅಂತ. So what would you like to say about this?
ನಾನು ರೀಸೆಂಟ್ಲಿ ರಾಜ್ ಬಿ ಶೆಟ್ಟಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಫೋನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೆ. I called him and I had watched Garuda Gamana and I told him that someday I want to make movies like you. in its purest form, without the manipulation of calling it a commercial cinema. I have it in me that I want to make these kind of movies. I came to the industry hoping to make these kind of movies and trying to tell stories the way these bold, big directors are doing it. They're living their life. But nanagondu, I have my first responsibility, which I have to make money. And I'm going to fulfill that. And someday, I've kept saying this to so many people, someday I'm going to make a movie that represents Prashanth. Right now, I'm not making that movie. I'm making a movie that represents entertainment. I'm contributing to
Wasn't
entertainment.
Rocky a bit of Prashanth as well?
No. I'm not that. It's probably what I want to be and what I can't be is what Rocky is. I'm not that bold. I'm not that brave. I'm not that ambitious. I'm very scared. I have a family. When you have a family and you have a responsibility to that, you're thinking about that. You're not a risk taker. I'm not a risk taker. I was a risk taker. I came to the industry like every director. Industry change ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡೋಣ ಅಂತಾನೆ ನಾನು ಬಂದಿದ್ದು. But when I came and I saw that how much ever I was trying my best to do something, there was no support from anybody outside. Today the whole of Karnataka knows me. Other parts also know that there is a Prashanth Neel. Before Ugram, nobody knew me. I had to struggle during those times to get what I wanted. And it's. I think that question will be asked again, time and again, if I am making the right decisions. Am I a backstabber? And all these kind of questions. But it is very simple for me. My focus is here. I'm here because I'm making money, and that's the only thing I know. That is why I'm doing it. I cannot change the way I am.
Sure. And just to clarify, Nanna question is not about Salar, Telugu industry, nothing. Prashanth is leaving KFI, none of that. And I completely like the honesty, and I put out a tweet about that as well. But just to extend this question, when you say, and I think that will also clarify it for the audience, and I need that clarity to understand what you're thinking. When you say I'm here to make money, what does that mean? Like, may sound stupid, but are you saying this is the target I have and I have to get there, or are you saying sustenance? An even better lifestyle for your family and all. What do you mean when you say?
I can't tell you why I want that money, what I want that money for. It's a very, very personal thing for me.
Sure.
But if ನನ್ನ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಗೋಗಿದೆ, that is all done. I can't ask for more. Vijay Kirgandur has taken care of all that. I have no complaints about that. But money is power. You can do anything that you want with money. And right now I'm following money. Wherever I go, whatever I do, whether I'm going to the Telugu film industry, if I have the strength to sustain there for a long time or not, my results only will speak for that. And I think more or less I am going to follow that path for us for a few more years.
Profession na hege nodtiri? What does being bold or dreaming big mean as far as Prashanth Neel is concerned and as far as his career perhaps or life is concerned?
Actually, I'm not a bold or I don't dream big at all. Yeah, it's to the contrary. If I was to dream big after Ugram, I would have done with a newcomer.
Sure.
I've taken the safe route and gone with one of the biggest stars. Next movie I'm doing with one of the biggest stars in India also. And then with NTR or jothe ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. So that is a safe zone for me. I'm not a risk taker. I'm not bold. I'm not any of those things that you're telling I am. Maybe my subjects will come across looking like that. Maybe I'm putting in a lot of budget, but that budget is already covered with the kind of combinations that we are going with.
Sure.
So you can call me a coward actually. I'm not bold.
So the last question, right? If you can tell me 4 or 5 of your favorite Indian directors and your favorite films of theirs.
Mukul Anand, Agnipath.
And Ramesh Sippy's, I'm assuming.
Ramesh Sippy, Sholay. Then I have Subhash Ghai. I have 5-6 movies of his. I love Ram Lakhan. I love Khalnaik. Khalnaik is my all-time favorite movie from him. There are so many movies of Subhash Ghai. Then there is RGV. Then you have Upendra sir, and then you have SS Rajamouli.
Excellent. So I have the answer for this already, but ಬರ್ಕೊಂಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಒಂದು ಚೀಸಿ ಲೈನು, ಸೊ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಎನಿವೇ ಆಸ್ಕ್. ಮುಂಬೈನ ಲಾಲಿಪಾಪ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಹಾಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾದ ಮೇಲೆ ರಾಕಿಗೆ ತನ್ನ ಎದುರಿಗೆ ಇದ್ದ ಸಮುದ್ರ ಕೂಡ ಬಾವಿ ಥರ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಂತೆ. ಸೊ ಇದನ್ನು ಬರೆದ ಪ್ರಶಾಂತ್ ನೀಲ್ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಪ್ರಶಾಂತ್ ನೀಲ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ನಿಜವಾದ ಸಾಗರ ಏನು ಈಗ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು?
I have no idea. I don't think that far ahead. ನನಗೆ I want to make good commercial movies which make a lot of numbers. That is very, very important for me. I've already said it in another interview. I think numbers are the most important thing. That is your validation. Awards, criticism, critics, feedback, they all come very last.
Correct.
For me, it is the numbers. Numbers is the only validation that you get in today's world. And somehow, if I don't achieve it with this one, I want to achieve it with the next one. If I don't achieve it with that, then I'll keep trying.
Sure. Prashant, I want you to know that most of us, many of people as audience like me, we're all cheering for you. And ಈಗ ನೀವು ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಸಮಯಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು.
Thank you so much.